Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Yolin, and thank you so much for taking this 1 hour of your time to join us for the Momentum Academy talk. Today, the topic will be Web3, the inevitable next step. So we're very excited to share with you this the report and some sharing that we have. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to Nanette. Next.
Okay, thank you, Yolin. So next, please. So who we are. So most of you probably already know us. We are, previous slides, please. Okay, sorry, previous one. Thank you. So most of you probably already know us. So we are Momentum Works, a Singapore-based headquartered venture outfit. And what we do is we build, scale, and manage tech ventures across the emerging markets by leveraging on our knowledge, community, and experience to be able to inform, connect, and enable the new tech ecosystem. Next, please. So as you may know, we are actually the host of the talk today is Momentum Academy, and Momentum Academy is a subsidiary from Momentum Works, which leverages on our insights, experience, and community to develop real immersive learning experience for corporations and also for individuals. Next, please. And what we can do, we're able to do talks, simulations, mentorships, and also other customized programs. So if you're interested to find out more, do feel free to check out to our website. Next, please. And here are some samples of our courses and programs. You're allowed to take a look for a while, and then after that, we will also distribute this after the talk. So then you can also take a read for this. Next, please. And let's talk about the team who are here with you today. So I'm going to mention it one by one to you in alphabetical order, of course. So starting with Aish, Ambrose, Carter, Jangad, Julia, Nanette, myself, Sania, Shiting, Xavier, and Yorlin. And I want to give a very big thanks to the Insights team who also made this report. So thank you to Carter, Jangad, Sania, and Xavier, and to my Momentum Academy team, Ambrose, Julia, Shiting, and Yorlin, and of course myself. And finally, to my communications manager, Aish, who also sent you all the invitations. Next, please. And Momentum Works has been working closely with Momentum Academy has been working closely with Momentum Works Insights team in order to bring you out the programs that we have. So most of our programs are based on our insights, and we have multiple reports where you can also download and check out to read more about it. So next, please. And as you may know, this is our 4th Academy talk, and we have a previous talk that we also publish on our YouTube channel. So if you missed that one out, you can feel free to check it out on our YouTube channel. Next. And finally, we will deviate a bit from our report, but here are some questions that we will address today. So we have 7 questions that we were trying to answer, and starting from what is Web3? Are cryptocurrencies doomed? Is NFTs the true revolution? Is axieinfinity success replicable? Is stepn a Ponzi scheme? Are you too late to join the party, or is there a party at all? So to begin with, I will pass this to my colleague Ambrose. So Ambrose, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so maybe you can address some of the concerns out there in the main headlines. Next slide. Yeah, so I'm sure many of you have heard that actually crypto is doomed, and you can see the price chart. Bitcoin has dropped from a record high of $66,000 to recently about $18,000. So that's more than like a 70% drop. And also Three Arrows Capital, viewed as one of the gods of crypto investment, is now facing insolvency, although not entirely due to crypto crashing. Everything seems to be unraveling now. Next slide. Yeah, and to add fuel to the fire, if you follow crypto and the news, all you hear are actually like bad news. So from the axieinfinity hack, apparently linked to North Korean hackers, to Luna crashing in the DeFi industry, and also Celsius pausing all their transfers and withdrawal during the market tumble. And also famously, recently, Bill Gates said that NFTs are a sham based on the greater fool theory. So the question we really want to address today is whether Web3 is it as evil as people say, and whether Bill Gates is true. Next slide. Yeah, so if you study the events and actually filter out the noise, it's not really about whether decentralization or crypto being evil. We did write a blog post about it, and you recognize the picture is actually from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, but in summary, fundamentally, what happened to Celsius and various other VCs is a typical over-leveraged problem that we see in the traditional finance all the time. And crypto lenders are unregulated banks, and cryptocurrencies weren't actually meant to underpin such structures. And in fact, they were actually meant to circumvent them. So if you like to read more about it, you can actually check out our website. The link is in the slide. Next slide. And also, we are asked every day by people that we meet and serious investors about the opportunities in Web3. We did write a report on it, so if you'd like to get a copy, you can visit our website. And yeah, there are many more to come, so do look out for them as well. Yeah, now I'll pass the time over to San.
Hi, everyone. So what really is Web3? I know it's what we're here to talk about today, and I'm sure you've seen at least one of these, if not all of these pictures. Actually, feel free to put them in the chat if you can name them all, but let's go through this clockwise. So on the top left, we have the infamous Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs now venturing into the metaverse. Top middle, we've got Elon Musk holding a little Doge. He infamously let people buy Teslas with their coin. On the top right, we've got Axies. Axieinfinity is actually the most popular game in the Philippines throughout COVID, and it's actually become some people's livelihood. On the bottom left, we have Changpeng Zhao, the founder of Binance. In the bottom middle, we have the former Staples Center, now called the Crypto.com Arena after they bought naming rights. And of course, on the bottom right, we have the Sandbox, the most popular metaverse platform, built by Animoca Brands, a Hong Kong-based company. Next slide, please. So let's just take a minute to really understand Web3. Next slide, please. It is no coincidence that there were several major events that shook the world that led to a distrust in institutions. And it's also no coincidence that these events coincided with major developments in Web3. Let's just go through some of them. So first we have the Lehman Brothers triggering the 2008 financial crisis. Right after that, Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was born. Right after that, in 2016, we had Cambridge Analytica and the Facebook data privacy scandal. That triggered a wave of ICOs and the creation of many other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum. Then we had very recently Wall Street bets on Reddit shorting GameStop. Bitcoin then hit an all-time high, and trust in cryptos and decentralization seriously increased. Following that, very recently with the COVID-19 pandemic, people lost their jobs, and becoming time rich and money poor, they turned to axieinfinity, a play to earn model, and NFTs exploded coincidentally as well. And right then, we've seen crypto take a serious hit. Now with the market down, the real question is, what's going to happen next? Look how far we've come. Even the Internet Explorer recently retired. Next slide, please. The Internet Explorer is actually a Web 1 concept. That's why I brought it up. But what really is the difference between the three? Web 1 was a read-only web. It was consumers only. Only a handful of people could produce any content. Web 2 was read and write. So we had consumers and producers there. And Web 3, what we're moving into now is read, write, and own. So you can actually own the content that you're producing, unlike the photos you upload to Facebook or the TikToks you make on their platform. Throughout that shift from Web 1 to 2 to 3, we've also seen a serious growth in the percent of the world population using the web. Now, with only half of the world online, actually only a small percentage of those are actually on Web 3, but it's very clearly a high growth area. Next slide, please. So underpinning Web 3 is this concept of decentralization. But what really is it? It's really the shift from the mindset of, if you think of a typical company with a top-down hierarchical structure, to a distributed peer-to-peer model where people have either an equal say or as much of a say as they actually want to have in the movements of the company or an organization. Next, please. The other term that's very important to understand is blockchain. So blockchain technology is the foundation of all things Web3, but what actually is And it's kind of hard to picture, but if you think of it as a ledger recording every transaction that every person interacting with the space has equal access to, every page then becomes a block with a group of transactions. All those pages put together form the blockchain. For more on this, please read our Web3 report, but for now I'll pass it back to Nanette to kind of explain this in more layman's terms.
Okay, thank you, Sun. So here, let me explain to you in a more layman terms on what is blockchains and what essentially is blockchains and how does it really translate for you in the real world. You might have heard there's so many jargons about blockchains, but essentially blockchains is forms of the foundations in all the Web3 bases. So how does it work? So for example, you can see multiple blockchains out there. You know that there's Ethereum blockchains, there's Doge blockchain, there's the Bitcoin blockchain and also the Terra blockchain. And on top of these blockchains, there's a cryptocurrency that built on top of it. So for example, Ethercoin was built on top of Ethereum blockchains, and Dogecoin was built on top of Doge blockchain. And then Bitcoin was built on top of Bitcoin blockchain, and Luna coin was built on top of Terra blockchain. And all these cryptocurrencies also allow you to buy, there are two things that you can actually buy, the digital assets and also the physical assets. The digital assets that include the Shiba token, the token that you see, like for example, a Shiba token, and then also the NFTs, like for example, the BAYC that Sun mentioned before, or also the Doge NFTs. And also the physical assets that you can buy is something that you found in your everyday life. For example, Gucci. Gucci allows to be bought by Ethereum coin, and then after that, Tesla was allowed to be bought by the Dogecoin. And then, interestingly, Bitcoin, you are allowed to buy actually Subway. So this is very interesting. And finally, sadly, if you know Luna, it's supposed to be a very stable coin, but it has crashed, and then also they are now closed its shop. So we won't be covering about it today. Next slide, please. And if you're also interested in understanding more the difference about what is the Bitcoin, what is Ether, so you can also take a look at this and also read it on your own terms. We have it in our report, but then we don't want to bore you through, so we're not going to do this in depth. So next, I'm going to pass this to Jonggan, who will explain to you there's a lot of more than the cryptocurrencies in the Web3. So Jonggan, over to you.
Thank you, Nanette. It's very interesting for the past half a year, basically. You have the situation of the lockdown in China, so a lot of investors actually came down to Singapore, and one of the common refrains in our discussions is Web3, because first I think people are always looking for new opportunities, and second, so people now have the time because many of the existing sectors have exhausted themselves of large opportunities. So there's lots of I've never seen such a concentration of people and minds actually deliberating and debating about potential use cases, potential future about Web3. But one thing I realized in common is that one by one people get excited. So as someone said, it's like a religion. Like you see people who are older than you, who were previously very serious, very skeptical. Whenever they see a new business model, they get excited about Web3. So what is really happening? So I also spoke with, we also spoke with quite a number of people who were in the early days of the crypto movement. And next page, please. So the funny thing is that when we see the price slam over the last few weeks, and for many it looks familiar because I'm sure many of you remember in 2017 there was a wave of ICOs, white papers. I'm going to revolutionize this. I'm going to change that. I'm going to disrupt this and that. So a lot of coins or tokens were issued, and of course lots of liquidity went into the market, and that followed by almost 2 years of what they call winter. So the price slumped, and basically the people in there, many of them actually felt really painful. So if you ask people who have been in the industry of crypto industry for a long time, ask them about how psychologically they failed over the years. And what I find interesting is that many of them are still struggling with this, even though they have been there, seen it, failed from it. So next page, please. But there's also a difference between what we see now and what we saw in 2018. In 2018, they were just coins, they were just tokens and exchanges. There was pretty much nothing else. And when things went into a decline, it just went into a decline, and it just followed by a winter. But now, even though the prices are dropping drastically, we do see that there are a few possibilities made by some of the hot projects that we have seen over the past year and a half or two. So we have GameFi, and so basically people are creating economies in games. The famous ones are Axie Infinity, as well as a few games that Animoca brands based in Hong Kong have invested in, which my colleague will talk about in a bit. So we have the metaverse, and of course, the most famous thing is Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook changed its name to Meta. But we do see multiple attempts to build a sort of parallel universe to what we see in the real world. And not all of them will succeed, but we do see some interesting things happening. And of course, you still see the exchanges, centralized or decentralized. And the last part, which we are experimenting as well, is the DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Some of you might have even experimented with that. And for those of you who have experimented that, you probably know that theoretically, it seems very efficient, it seems very easy, but actually to map everything into a smart contract, it's not that straightforward. So there are lots of things happening, there are lots of possibilities. There are lots of use cases which have been demonstrated by the search over the last 2 years. Even though some of these projects are probably no longer sustainable, we have learned a lot collectively from all these initiatives, and we'll probably be able to build something new. I mean, either us, somebody else, somebody out there in the market. What is really interesting is that there are really lots of attempts happening at the moment. Next page, please. So we did a small sampling of the ecosystem in Southeast Asia. Of course, there are lots of things happening, but you still see a bulk of what you observe, a bulk of what the investments go into are the exchanges. I mean, you have, I don't know, 13, 14 exchanges in Indonesia which have been licensed. And I think in Thailand, the big news was also an exchange being bought over by a Siam Commercial Bank at valuation of unicorn level. So, but many of these exchanges are really something which has existed for a while. So in terms of the new economy, in terms of the NFT, GameFi, etc. So there are lots of attempts happening. Very few of them are successful. But there are tons of white papers which offer us very interesting learnings about what might come in the future. Next page, please. Of course, many of you know the exchanges. Many of you have used the exchanges. Most of the so-called crypto exchanges we have nowadays are essentially like banks, right? I mean, you put your assets there in a custodian account. Of course, you can withdraw that into your own wallet, and then I mean, trading activities will happen there. So this is the rank by coinmarketcap.com. So they have a scoring system to rank exchanges by multiple things. But these are the, I mean, familiar names that you will see out there. And many of them are doing more than just trading of crypto. I mean, they also have other digital financial services on top of that. And of course, there are a number of sort of crypto financial services companies out there and doing different things. You have heard some of the names that my colleague Ambrose has mentioned, and some of them will probably not last through these couple of weeks, but nonetheless, there's lots of activities happening there. Next page, please. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the difference between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. So of course, when you put your assets into a custodian account with a platform with large liquidity, so the speed is going to be fast. The volume is easy to drive the volume high, and of course it's easy to add more features. Some people have been arguing that, okay, which one's more secure? But at the end of the day, each of these different possibilities would have different vulnerabilities. So for the centralized exchanges, I mean, if someone hacks the exchange and then they steal the coins, and maybe the exchange will be responsible for reimbursing their clients. So I do have a few friends who run exchanges, and quite often they have to take money out of their own pocket to make sure that people are compensated, because they're regularly being attacked every day. A consequence of that is for whoever who manages to eventually survive all these attacks, they would have a very solid security system and probably some learnings from there. And for decentralized exchanges, and of course, the security depends on the users. And we all know that, I mean, as individuals, sometimes we do stupid things which are not secure. So these are the differences between centralized and decentralized exchanges. Next page, please. We have been doing some serious study about all these terms, and we try to pass them in simple ways. So for this page, I'm going to pass back to San, who will walk you through this and the next few pages.
Right, so both tokens and cryptocurrencies, these are two words that are frequently used interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different things. The main difference is that cryptocurrencies have their own underlying blockchains. Tokens do not, but they do have a cryptocurrency value that they can then be exchanged for, and those cryptocurrency values can be exchanged for fiat currencies like the US dollar. Next slide, please. And now on to my favorite topic, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Next slide, please. So NFTs are so much more than JPEGs of the monkey family. They actually provide proof of ownership and transaction history for digital and in some cases physical assets as well. And we expect to see a rise in that as the popularity of NFTs increases. They have a unique hash that cannot be altered, and added security is provided by the blockchain, but this unique hash also prevents fraud inherently. The words non-fungible means that you can't really have two of the exact same ones. Next slide, please. And as I said, sorry to those of you who have these, but they don't actually have a real use case beyond being a collectible and a status symbol. Bored Ape is moving into the metaverse, but the actual NFTs don't really have any true value beyond being intrinsic. Even so, they did catapult the ideas of NFTs into the mainstream, so we're thankful for them in that sense, but let's move on. And now on to one of my favorite players in the space, Animoca Brands. They are seriously and heavily invested into growing and developing the Web3 space. They are headquartered in Hong Kong by a man called Yatsu, who in my personal opinion is a genius with potentially a crystal ball. Some of their notable investments and subsidiaries include the Sandbox, the most popular metaverse platform out there by miles, MetaMask, the currently most used wallet in the Web3 space, lots of other hot and cold wallets like Ledger, Cryptokitties, which was actually the first NFT game out there, and was actually their first investment as well in the Web3 space. Next slide, please. Like I said, it's almost like they have a crystal ball. They were an early adopter. Cryptokitties was enormously successful. Like I said, their first foray into the Web3 space, but they also led the seed round of axieinfinity's fundraising, which has now become the most popular GameFi out there, GameFi being the merging of NFTs and gaming. They also developed the Sandbox in-house themselves. It is the most popular metaverse, with Snoop Dogg's music video called I Built a House actually fully taking place within the platform on Sandbox land. And they've partnered with so many big brands like the NBA to develop and host their Web3 ventures, really bringing the movement into the mainstream. Next slide, please. And I will just hand this to Nanette to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, so thank you, Sun. And I'm gonna run you through real quick on how successful are the ventures that like Animoca brands has. So Animoca do like invest or actually like own. So they invested in the NFT, which is the Cryptokitties, and also they also invested in axieinfinity, and they also have the sandbox. And I will show you how big they are. So first of all, the Cryptokitties, you know that this is an NFT based game, like that catapulted like all the Animoca brands into the Web3 world. It was released in 2017, where you can actually like own it and also breed it and also sell it as an NFT. And which like this is very interesting. They generated over 100 million US dollars in sales with over $2 billion valuations. And second is the Sandbox. So Sandbox was originally a mobile game, and then they iterated and changed it into metaverse, where then people can build, own, and also monetize their gaming experience. So companies like Gucci, Coca-Cola, even have like their own world there. And imagine like the very interesting one is banks like HSBC. They also have a land in this in the sandbox. And what got them interested is like they are one of the biggest platforms like in this metaverse, and they are raising like over $400 million with over $4 billion valuations. And finally, axieinfinity, as what Sun mentioned, it's like one of the most successful company to date, and they built this like play to earn model, and they are the first gamify that able to reach 2.7 million daily active users in November 2021. So I'm gonna pass this to Sun for the next slide, and she will explain it to you why is it so successful. Okay, Sun, over to you.
Thanks. So like Nanette said, Axie Infinity is currently the most popular blockchain-based game out there. They have the biggest market cap for a GameFi token, AXS, actually, excluding metaverse platforms like Sandbox and Decentraland. So just fundamentally, users can buy Axie NFTs to use within the game to breed or battle and even earn tokens, which can then be exchanged for fiat currency like the US dollar, like I mentioned. So people can actually earn money in this game, and Axie will provide a wallet, a Web3 wallet for those who don't already have them. So it's a great way to onboard people into the space as well. Next slide, please. So these are some of the success factors of Axie Infinity. Someday it'll be extremely strange to look back and think that we didn't always own our digital assets like swords within games or skins or avatars. The idea of ownership within Axie Infinity actually really attracts users to the space. Second of all, they grew immensely throughout the COVID pandemic. So when we became technology dependent and our screen time went up drastically, they had very good timing with launching new features at that time. And lastly, Axie really prides itself on its community. So they have Discord channels and Twitter threads with game developers and decision makers within Sky Mavis, its parent company, where users can actually interact with the people that will be shaping their gameplay. And they are moving to a more decentralized governance system later this year or potentially early next year. And so we can really see them integrating user feedback on a daily basis. Next slide, please. So just to break down Axie's revenue flow within Sky Mavis, Axie makes most of their revenue from breeding fees, which is the act of creating more Axies from existing Axie NFTs. That costs users some Axie tokens within the game, and so Axie takes that money back. The other 13.3% of their revenue comes from transaction fees. So they have their own marketplace within the game where users can buy and sell NFTs or game items, and their revenue between May 2021 and May 2022 was actually 1.35 billion US dollars. So they are doing very well. Next, please. And yeah, I will pass this back to Jong-un to talk about stepn.
Pretty sure that all of you have heard of this, walk to earn, move to earn, whatever you call it. So basically you buy a virtual shoe and then you can earn sort of points as you walk. So there's lots of discussions about it, and many people say that it's a Ponzi scheme. And of course, I assume that all of you know what is actually a Ponzi scheme. The question here is that what qualifies it as a Ponzi or non-Ponzi? So as we say it, so a Ponzi scheme is that it's where you basically use the money you collect from subsequent investors to pay out the promises that you have made to existing investors. So, and of course, the system would work as long as there are people coming in to join the scheme. But the moment that you don't have enough people to join, then the system collapses. Does that apply to stepn? Maybe, or maybe not. In which circumstances that will not apply is that so that happens when stepn itself is able to generate enough cash flow that's not far away from the promises that they made to existing investors, participants, or whatever members. So that is actually possible because it has gained popularity. It has lots of users, and I think it has the ability to generate an IP, to generate cash flows from multiple ways. I mean, merchandise, etc., etc. If it managed to pull this off, and then maybe it will not become a Ponzi scheme, and because it will have enough revenue to distribute. I mean, the same can be said about what we saw with the Bored Apes, right? I mean, it's a status symbol, but of course, when it's invested, when there's so much investor interest behind it, it always almost have a tendency to cause inflation by overissuing the NFTs. And how does it compensate that is by creating cash flows. And I think it has become a brand, and it has made attempts to go into metaverse, create games, create movies, etc., etc. So so the truth is we don't know, and of course, I mean, as these are games or systems which have become successful, probably beyond expectations of their own founders. So the question is that, will it be able to navigate through this, build sustainable business models, whilst being able to manage all these expectations from different people within its own ecosystem? And that's a question mark. Next page, please. So another question which many people asked is that, is axieinfinity sustainable? So that was a question which has been I think debated, and every time we meet friends from Vietnam who have been in the ecosystem, and of course so there are different opinions about the game economics of axieinfinity, and of course, when things become popular, some of the flaws are amplified as well, and the pressure on the founders to actually meet the expectations of different stakeholders will probably be very high. This this chart on the left is actually pulled out an hour ago. So that shows the movement of the price of the main governance token of axieinfinity. It has gone up tremendously last year, and it has gone back to not exactly the same level, but pretty low levels. So so the question is that, I mean, when things are hyped up so much, what does that do to the psychology, to the people involved? And are they able to manage that well? And what will happen after the bust? Would they be able to transition this business into something more sustainable? We hear that they are building this from play to earn to play and earn, and of course these are all question marks. So we do have a few friends who were presented the opportunity to invest in Sky Mavis back in 2018 and 2019. I think all of them declined, which would have given them opportunity to become multimillionaires. The question is back then, I mean, if you see this business model, if you see this white paper, which seems to deviate so much from what you already know, what would you do? I think not to invest was probably the right decision, because at that time you probably see more things which looked a bit weird to you. But the question is that, okay, since we have already gone through a full cycle for axieinfinity, at this stage, what should we do when we see things? So I have a friend in Vietnam who has become almost full-time reader of white papers, and he reads like hundreds of white papers from different teams, mostly from Vietnam, each month. So of course there are lots of people who are trying to replicate axieinfinity, who are trying to copy the exact business model, and most of them even copy the exact token economics, exactly the white paper, just change the name, change the whatever. So we see this as an interesting initiative because when people start to copy, I mean, hopefully eventually some teams would understand this deeply and would understand the real sort of flaws of the business model and be able to innovate something. So as my friend said that if he sees something which is exactly copying axieinfinity, first, he doesn't think that such projects would be investable. If he sees something which is based on that, but it's slightly weird, he would pause and have more time to look at what really is happening and try to understand whether there's something which he has missed. Even though it might not lead to successful investment opportunities, it's a tremendous learning opportunity for him in the Web3 space. Next page, please. I think it's a Spanish conclusion. Anyway, yeah. So we have been internally debating, and some of you guys have known us for a while, and you probably knew that we had a fairly good grasp of the Web2 business models, especially the ones including offline, like e-commerce, fintech, logistics, food delivery, etc., etc. Why are we investing so much resources in understanding Web3? That precisely leads to a discussion that I was having with a investor that I have respected for more than 10 years, and every time that we experience something new, and I would always have a discussion with him. So about a few months ago, so he was asking me a question. He said, if I discussed with you about crypto a year ago, what would you think? I said, lots of scams. He said, yeah, I would think the same. But the emergence of NFT, the discussions that he has had with lots of young people in their teens, and the use cases that he has seen, be it axieinfinity, be it stepn, etc., which are not mature, but it gives some interesting perspectives about what might come in the future. Of course, if you look at what we have now, I mean, there are lots of inefficiencies. So, for instance, equity investment, you need to. So for instance, for a company to raise money in a public market, I mean, you guys know that how expensive the exercise is, and as a result, very few companies are able to do that. And what is the reason why this exercise is so expensive? It's because the SEC or regulators in each market, they want to protect the retail investors. They want to reduce the systemic risk. But the question is that what is causing all this in the first place? And with this huge cost imposed into the entire ecosystem, do we see less fraud, or are we still not able to capture lots of things that are happening which should not really be happening? Should we have a system which is more efficient that frees up the regulators' time to do something which really captures the essence, which really protects the retail investors, not at the cost of everybody else? So, as a conclusion, next page, please. We have written in a report that okay, there are a few things which might happen in the Web3 space: new blockchains, evolution of play and earn, from play to earn, and expansion to other use cases. More movement towards digital assets and crypto native. I mean, this, if you talk to teenagers and you have lots of insights about, I mean, how they regard assets versus how different for us in our mid-30s would think. More wide-scale implementation of BAS, capitalizing on unregulated state, and eventually regulators would have an easy job. So we are trying to have this method debate within ourselves to understand what might happen. But eventually, no matter, I mean, we have been making predictions about Web2 or the so-called digital economy in Southeast Asia for the last, oh gosh, since 2017, and that for us has always been a mental exercise. But the thing is that we can probably never exactly predict what's going to happen. I mean, if we could do that, we would make investment bets, take a highly leveraged position, and earn lots of money out of it. But the truth is we can't. I mean, these days, if you speak with lots of crypto natives, lots of people who have been in the industry, been in the decentralization movement for 7-8 years, they are still learning. There are lots of things that they have different opinions on, but that's the natural part of anything that's new. So the right attitude, at least for us, is to really learn, to really understand what is going on. We might not be able to catch exact opportunities, but if this is the major shift, if this is a major revolution, we want to be part of it. And how do we want to be part of it? Are we too late? I'm going to pass to Sun to explain that.
Thank you. Yeah. So, something that I hear all the time when I talk to people about crypto and about Web3 is that it's a bubble. It's going to burst. What are you doing? And my answer is yes, it is a bubble, that it is going to burst. But why? Because a lot of these functions don't really have real life use cases. You heard me drone on about Bored Apes a little while ago, but they can and they will. And every technological advancement has been met with immense speculation. I mean, does anyone remember Face Mash, the picture that's on your screen? Who would have thought that Face Mash, essentially a bad version of Tinder crossed with Hot or Not, which got banned by Harvard in 2 days and was developed by teenage boys in their dorm room, would later turn into the world's premier social media conglomerate? Would you have invested in Face Mash? No, neither would I. But I think most of us have a little stake in Meta or Facebook now. Who would have thought that the dot-com bubble and subsequent crash would give rise to Google? The only question that really remains is what will come out of this bubble bursting. And as Jungin just mentioned, there are no experts. Anybody who tells you that they are an expert in Web3 is lying. It hasn't been around long enough for there to be any experts. Those of us who read and work in it day in, day out, always learning. There's always something new. And so it's hard or nearly impossible to predict, but the best thing to do, like Jungin said, is to stay informed, look for real use cases, and distill insights from all of the noise to make informed decisions. Someone is going to come out on top from all of this, that's for sure. The real question is, who are they and what do they do? Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you. So, just sharing with you the upcoming Web3 information that we'll be having. So there will be more reports coming out led by Sun and team. Look out for it in your email. Next slide. Okay, there will be Q&A, so I'll let you guys have some time to formulate your questions. And whilst that's happening, next slide, I want to share some really cool some news. First, Momentum Academy, just to reiterate that this talk was hosted by Momentum Academy. Thank you so much. Next slide. And we are going, Jungin and Professor Chen are in the midst of releasing a book, Seeing the Unseen. This is the first time we're announcing it to the public. We're really excited. It's going to be published by Wiley and it'll be out in September, and you can pre-order now from Amazon. So this book is about the fascinating world of Chinese logic that shapes the tech leader and in China and how they make decisions. You can also ask Q&A about this in a minute. Jungin is here to answer. And I think next slide, final slide. We'll be sending this presentation to all of you. If you have any questions on Academy, Web3, the book, anything, get in touch with Nanette or myself. We have our email address here, and you can also reach out to us in many, many ways. So back to any questions that we have. If not, then I think we can end this talk earlier. Okay, thank you so much everyone for attending this talk. It was really, really cool. Thank you, Jungin, Sun, Ambrose, Nanette as well. Yeah, so we are looking forward to our next talk. So keep in touch, okay? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good week. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Just
okay.
it's the end of the first half of the year of 2022. I mean, to see how fast things have become. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Okay. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.